Welcome back to day 2 of TICTeC. Hello to those of you who are joining us just for today. We're going to be using Slido for questions this morning and throughout the day. So we're also going to have roving mics in the auditorium. So please do use the barcode or go to Slido, enter the code 2986475. I'm going to talk briefly this morning. I talked a little bit yesterday about what's changed since we had that first TICTeC in 2015, and even since we had TICTeC last year in 2024, and our aspiration to use TICTeC this year to bring together people working on uses of technology to defend against democratic threats and people who are using technology constructively to try and enrich and build civic and democratic life. This morning, I'm just going to touch briefly on a few more things because we've got another day of brilliant presentations, panels, and workshops, and also another fantastic keynote speaker, and I don't want to delay any of that too much. I asked you yesterday to make the most of this opportunity to meet in person and really go out of your way to find your future colleagues and collaborators. That still applies today, so no excuses on that. But I also want to put a question in your mind as we go through the day, and hopefully one to take away with you. And it's the question we really wanted to pose to the field and to ourselves, which is, what is the work that we're called on to do now? We're in a complex moment. How can we respond most effectively to that moment? I heard a phrase that resonated with me a couple of weeks ago in a speech from Audrey Tang, Taiwan's first digital minister. She's been a huge contributor to our field, and she talked about the adjacent possible. And that kind of stuck in my mind, and I went and looked it up. It's a concept developed by Stuart Kauffman, who's a theoretical biologist, and it describes how biological systems evolve through small incremental steps, exploring boundaries, creating new connections, and exploiting opportunities that are just a step away from the current state of their system. Yesterday, I also mentioned the metaphor of the Red Queen problem, so ensuring democracy keeps pace with emerging technologies, and the idea that it takes all the running you can do just to stay in the same place. And the other place that Red Queen metaphor has been used a lot is also in biology. So the Red Queen hypothesis is the idea that species have to constantly adapt to their environment and evolve whilst they're pitted against other species that are also doing the same. So I kind of guess, rolling with that theme, another way of putting that question in your mind is, how do we need to evolve? And again, there's going to be no singular answer for everyone, but I note that alongside responding to the new technological developments and democratic developments, one of the pressures that projects around the world are responding to creatively is the climate crisis. So across the agenda today, we have diverse uses of civic tech to address this crisis, from lobbying transparency and the use of tech and data journalism to track patterns of corruption, environmental violations, and misuse of public resources, to the use of AI and collective action together at the city level in interesting ways. And as with yesterday, alongside sessions covering particular projects and approaches, we have sessions tackling those broader field questions. So thinking about ways in which we can work with other disciplines, looking at the kind of infrastructure we need to work most effectively, and addressing how we can bring tools together to reach people at a greater scale. We've also got several sessions today relating to and inspired by 2 smaller online communities of practice, which we've been running alongside the TICTeC conference for the last 2 years. One based around tools looking at parliamentary and legislative tracking, and one on tools supporting access to information and freedom of information. So these are areas that we at mySociety actively work in and can contribute to, and the reflection that led us to try and host these communities of practice was that the field has now matured to the point where we're seeing multiple instances of tools that do similar things. So we can both collaborate more closely and work out strategies, and I think the sessions yesterday on access to information were a really good example of the value of that. We can also make more meaningful like-for-like comparison of approaches and potentially kind of build that evaluation muscle as a field as well. We've got sort of mini subfields that we can start to divide into. And in running these online communities of practice, our aim has been to try and connect people, prime topics that we can discuss when we meet in person, and really kind of build our impact collectively. We're extremely grateful to NED for their support of this work. But we have also been thinking how we can most usefully use these tools as an opportunity for the sector, and we're going to make some changes over the next six months as a result. One of those changes is that we're going to be broadening the parliamentary and legislative tracking community of practice to include wider democratic transparency, including groups working on local democracy and deliberative and participatory democracy. As you can see from the sessions today and yesterday, these are both areas in which there's new and interesting work being done, in part driven by the new capabilities that LLMs are bringing. We're also going to be focusing more on technical innovation, as we want the meetings and resources to play a complementary role with broader regional parliamentary monitoring networks. We want to avoid overlap and focus on what we think these community meetings and resources can best deliver. So diffusion and discussion of technical innovation, connections to a wider set of pro-democratic tech organisations to provide useful inspiration and ideas from other places. We're going to take what we've learned at this conference and the continued work of these communities of practice and start producing more written materials from them to try and overcome barriers in terms of timing and time zones and languages of events, to really make the learnings more accessible and persistent to a wider range of participants and contributors. And finally, drawing all that together, we're planning a final output from the current iteration of TICTeC, which is a landscape report, which we're going to be publishing towards the end of the year, trying to draw together ideas on what's going on in civic tech, pro-democratic tech, how it can be supported and made more effective. Our goal here is really going to be to express the value of the work, identify how things could be improved, and where there are good ideas that we could spread more widely. One of our reasons for doing this work is to try and help develop suggestions for future work, including future iterations of the TICTeC and other program elements around it, try and articulate opportunities, strategies, building and bridging on both democratic and technological innovation. So if that has piqued your interest, please find me, Alex, Gemma or Julia throughout the day today if you're interested in joining the communities of practice, or if you are interested in talking to us in the context of that broader research. We're closing out the conference this afternoon with a session that we've called The Future of Tech, the Future of TICTeC. So first of all, please forgive that name and remember that naming things is infamously one of the two hard problems in computer science. We wanted to first use that time to pick apart some of the nuances of our practical experience as an organisation over the last couple of years, applying new AI tools and approaches to civic and pro-democratic work, sharing some of the conversations we've had internally as we've done that, and talking about things that we've decided to pursue and things that we haven't decided to pursue and what the reasoning around that was. The point of view that we're coming from there is that as civic technologists, we're going to have the greatest impact if we're alive, engaging with new tools, doing that critically and transparently, but making sure that we have the best available tooling to do the work we want to do, and for our own purposes, being clear about what we're using and why. But also that although we're a small field, we're a field that has touch points in civil society, government, democratic institutions, and academia, and there's value not just in the outcomes of us engaging thoughtfully with new tech, but also in sharing that decision-making process, talking about the how and the why as well as the what. So this is going to be an experimental session, seeing the value of doing that in this community. Following that, we want to start that conversation on how TICTeC might be useful in the future. We're going to be asking what's useful to you in the sector in terms of sharing learnings that are globally applicable in how to take advantage of and also respond to new developments in technology. And you can still provide your thoughts ahead of that session via the Citizen Dialogue Kit devices, which are downstairs. So very grateful if you haven't done that, if you would take a moment to do that. And now we are going to be kicking off the day with a fantastic keynote on the potential for building stronger democracy through data, information and technology from Fernanda Campanucci.